Do you think the threat of impeachment has any impact on the trade talks with China?
I don't think that it does. And regardless of what's happening in the United States, it remains good policy and good politics to try to get a deal with China where they change some of the structural issues that we've been concerned about. And I don't see impeachment changing that. I think it's also important for China to note that regardless of what's happening in the United States, regardless of who's president, regardless of what happens in the election, this policy on China is here to stay. And it's not in China's interest to try to wait this out and to see what happens. It's in China's interest to work with the U.S. to try to get a deal. And just to give you one example of where I think impeachment has been, hasn't had an impact is on USMCA. And the reports that I'm hearing from the Hill this week are that Republicans and Democrats continue to try to work together on that issue, regardless of what's happening on impeachment. So I think it shows that where the substance is right, the sides can put these things off to the side and work together.
Stefan, given where we are and given the position the President and China's already kind of put us in, is it better to up the ante from here or to back down? Would it be worth doing a soft deal?
It isn't, and it wouldn't be. I mean, I think this confusion, I think, is part of the problem, which is these issues that face us with China are fundamental, and they're fundamental because in many respects, a market economy and a non-market economy of our respective sizes are incompatible. So dealing with intellectual property theft and counterfeiting, dealing with market access, dealing with state support, the Chinese state support of their companies is endemic to the way those economies run. And the notion today, as China celebrates the 70th year of Communist Party rule, that they are going to give up that control of their economy, which is so central to how they retain power, I think is unrealistic.
Stefan, watching all the festivities today and seeing video footage of it, I think you're right. It seemed to me like it was kind of firming up their stance, hardening their stance. It's hard to imagine how you can convince them to give some ground, given what they've just been showing off for the world.
That's right. And the deal the Chinese people have made, Becky, is as long as you increase prosperity in our country and keep us safe, we will cede power to you, the Communist Party, going forward. And that's not a deal I think is likely to be unwound anytime soon.
Clete, if in fact both sides are relatively entrenched in these long-term positions, I mean, it seems like the conversation perhaps most immediately is going to be about the next round of tariffs and whether they go into effect. And is there any way to handicap that from your view?
Well, look, I think that the December 15th tariffs are going to be more disruptive for both of our economies than anything that's come before. And so I do think that from an economic standpoint, there is an incentive for both sides to really try to make some progress between now and December 15th. And I agree with Stefan that the nationalistic sentiment in China, that kind of stuff is going to make this very difficult. But the economics do line up, and that gives me a little bit of hope. And I mean, I think if you're China, you got to look at the fact that, the things the U.S. is asking for, intellectual property protection, that's actually good for you if your companies are moving up the value chain. If you're China, you need pork right now because you've got swine flu. And then from the U.S. standpoint, like I mentioned, the December 15th tariff bite, so you don't want to see that happen. And you also, if you look at things like Huawei, you may realize that if you aren't granting licenses for some U.S. companies, that production is just going to move overseas, and China's going to still be able to get some of those components. So there's interest in both sides in trying to come up with a way forward to resolve this before December 15th. That said, the politics of this are very, very difficult, and that's why I think it is going to be pretty hard to get there.